The war had been over for more than a decade, but on Okinawa, some people believed that the dead had never received the message. In 1958, the island was still carrying the scars of the Battle of Okinawa. There were places where the earth had been torn apart by artillery, caves where families had hidden during the fighting, villages that had been destroyed and rebuilt. And scattered across the island were the remains of men who had died in a war that most of the world had already moved on from. For the American station there, Okinawa was becoming home. For the people who lived there, it was a place caught between the memories of the past and the uncertainty of the future. And sometimes, when the sun went down, the past seemed to come looking for the living. This is the story of a young Marine who claimed he met a Japanese soldier on a lonely road, a soldier who'd been dead for 13 years. And according to the Marine, the soldier didn't know the war was over. My name is Daniel Carter. In 1958, I was 21 years old and stationed on Okinawa. Back then, I didn't know much about the island. I knew it was beautiful. I knew the heat was unbearable, and I knew that everywhere you went, there were reminders of the war. You could be walking through a quiet village and suddenly find yourself standing beside a concrete bunker. You could be driving down a road and see rusted pieces of military equipment hidden in the grass. And every once in a while, someone would warn you about unexploded ammunition. Don't touch anything you find. That was the rule. But there was another rule that nobody officially wrote down. If you saw something strange at night, keep driving. I learned about that rule a few weeks after arriving. At the time, I thought it was just another story Marines told each other. I was assigned to a small maintenance unit, and most of my nights were spent working late. There was nothing particularly exciting about it. Engines, vehicles, paperwork, long hours. The kind of work that makes you forget what day it is. One night, sometime after midnight, I was driving back toward our barracks. The road was nearly empty. The moon was bright enough to see the outline of the hills, and the jungle on either side of the road was almost completely black. I remember thinking how strange it was. I had been on Okinawa for several months, but I still couldn't get used to how quickly darkness took over. One minute you could see everything, the next, nothing. I was driving slowly when I noticed someone standing beside the road. At first I thought it was a local man. He was wearing what looked like an old military uniform. I couldn't make out the details. The man was standing with his back to me, completely still. I slowed down. As I passed him, I looked in the rear view mirror. He was still standing there. I kept driving. A few minutes later, I was back at the barracks. I didn't think much about it. The next night, I saw him again. Same road, same spot, same uniforms, same position, standing perfectly still. This time, I stopped. I rolled down my window. "Hey!" The man didn't move, and I called again. "Are you all right?" Slowly, the man turned his head. I remember the feeling that came over me. It wasn't fear, not at first. It was confusion. The man's face looked Japanese. He was young, maybe 25, maybe younger. His uniform looked old and worn, not like anything I had seen American forces wearing. He stared at me, then he said something. I couldn't understand him. I shook my head. "Sorry?" He repeated himself. This time I understood one word. War? I laughed nervously. War? The man nodded, then he asked me something in Japanese. I didn't understand the words, but I understood the question. He wanted to know something, and I told him the only thing that made sense. The war is over. The man's expression changed. It was the strangest thing I had ever seen. He looked relieved. For a moment he smiled. Then he looked past me, toward the darkness behind my vehicle, and his smile disappeared. I turned around. There was nothing there. When I looked back, the man was gone. I got out of the car. I searched the road. I looked into the trees. Nothing, no footsteps, no sound, nothing. I got back into my vehicle and drove away. The next morning I told one of the older Marines what had happened. He listened without laughing. That bothered me. I expected him to make fun of me. Instead, he asked me one question. "Where did you see him?" I told him. The Marine became quiet. Then he said something I didn't understand. "Don't stop there again." "Why?" He looked at me. "Because you're not the first one." I thought he was joking. He wasn't. According to him, several Marines had reported seeing a Japanese soldier along that road. Some had seen him standing. Some claimed he was walking. One Marine said the soldier had tried to stop his vehicle. But the strangest part was always the same. The soldier appeared to be waiting for someone. Nobody knew who. I didn't believe any of it. Not really, until I saw him again. 3 nights later. This time he wasn't standing beside the road. He was walking, slowly, toward me. I was driving when I saw him. He stepped out of the darkness. I hit the brakes. The vehicle stopped. The soldier stood directly in front of me. I froze. He looked exactly the same. The same uniform, the same young face, the same exhausted expression. He walked toward my window. I didn't roll it down. He tapped on the glass. Once, twice. Then he said something. I couldn't understand him. I shook my head. The soldier leaned closer. And this time, I understood. "Are they coming?" I stared at him. "Who?" He looked behind me, his eyes widened, and suddenly he began to panic. He stepped away from the vehicle. Then he pointed toward the hillside. I turned my head. At first I saw nothing. Then I heard it. A sound. Very faint. Almost like someone crying. I turned back toward the soldier. He was staring at the hillside. I looked again. The crying was louder. Then I heard another voice. Then another. Then dozens. Men, women, children, all crying, all calling out, all coming from somewhere inside the darkness. I couldn't move. The soldier began backing away from my vehicle. "No," he whispered. Then he said something in Japanese. I didn't understand the words, but I understood the fear. He wasn't afraid of me. He was afraid of whatever was coming from that hill. Suddenly the crying stopped. Everything became silent. The soldier looked directly at me, and he said, "Tell them we're still here." Then the headlights of my vehicle flickered. The soldier disappeared. I didn't drive away. I couldn't. I sat there for several minutes, staring at the empty road. Eventually, I drove back to the barracks. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I went looking for answers. I found an older Okinawan man who worked near the area. Through another Marine who spoke some Japanese, I explained what I had seen. The old man listened. When I finished, he asked me to describe the soldier. I did. The old man became very quiet. Then he asked me where I'd seen him. I pointed toward the road. The old man's face changed. He told me that during the Battle of Okinawa, there had been a civilian cave somewhere in that area. A natural cave. Families had hidden there during the fighting. But the cave had been sealed. I asked him why. He said he didn't know, or perhaps he didn't want to tell me. I asked him about the Japanese soldier. The old man looked at me, then he said, "That soldier is still looking for the people he was supposed to protect." I didn't understand. The old man explained that during the war, young Japanese soldiers sometimes moved through the villages. Some were assigned to defend positions. Others were sent to find civilians, and some never returned. The soldier I'd seen, he believed, had died somewhere near the cave. But the soldier didn't know he was dead. He was still waiting, still listening, still believing that someone would eventually come out of the darkness. That night, I didn't go back to the road. For several weeks, I didn't see the soldier again. Eventually, I convinced myself that the whole thing had been a combination of exhaustion, darkness, and imagination. Then one night, I received a phone call. A Marine from another unit had been driving near the same area. He had seen someone, a Japanese soldier, standing beside the road. The same description, the same uniform, the same place. I told him what I had experienced. He laughed. He thought I was trying to scare him. Then he said something that made my blood run cold. I stopped and talked to him. I asked what happened. The Marine became quiet. He said the soldier had asked him a question. "Has the war ended?" The Marine told him yes. Then the soldier smiled, just like he had smiled at me. But then the soldier asked another question. "Why can I still hear them?" The Marine said he suddenly heard voices coming from the hillside. He drove away, but before he left, he saw something. A small group of people standing in the trees. Women, children, men. They were all facing the road, and standing among them was the Japanese soldier. The Marine never went back. Years passed. I eventually left Okinawa, but I never forgot that soldier. In 1972, Okinawa returned to Japanese administration. The island continued to change. New roads were built. New buildings appeared. Old battlefields disappeared beneath modern development. But the stories remained. Years later, I returned to Okinawa. I wanted to find the road. I wanted to see the place where I'd met the soldier, but I couldn't find it. The area had changed. The road was gone. The landscape looked completely different. I was about to give up when I noticed something. A small memorial. It stood beside an overgrown hillside. There was no sign explaining much about it. Just names of people who had died during the war. I stood there for a long time. Then I noticed something, a name, a Japanese soldier. The date of his death, June 1945. 13 years before I had seen him. I stared at the name. Then I looked at the photograph beside it. It was an old photograph, faded, damaged. But the face was clear. I recognized him immediately. It was the soldier from the road. The same face, the same young eyes, the same expression. I couldn't breathe. I asked an elderly man who was standing nearby if he knew anything about the soldier. The man looked at the photograph. Then he looked at me. He asked, "Did you see him?" I didn't answer. The old man nodded as if he already knew. Then he said something I will never forget. Many people have seen him. I asked him why. The old man looked toward the hillside. Because he doesn't know. Doesn't know what? The old man stared at me. That he is dead. I felt a coldness move through me. Then I remembered the soldier's final words. Tell them we're still here. I asked the old man what he meant. He didn't answer. Instead, he pointed toward the hillside, and that's when I noticed it. A small opening almost completely hidden by vegetation. A cave. I walked closer. The entrance was partially collapsed, but I could see inside. It was dark. Very dark. And suddenly, I heard something. A voice coming from inside. I froze. The voice was quiet. Almost a whisper. But I knew it. I'd heard it before. The voice of the soldier. Are they coming? I stepped backward, then I heard another sound. A child crying. Then another. Then another. I ran. I never returned to that place. I spent the rest of my life wondering what happened inside that cave. But years later, I learned something that made the story even worse. The cave had not been empty. During the Battle of Okinawa, civilians had taken shelter there. Some survived, others didn't. And according to local accounts, people sometimes reported hearing voices near the cave long after the war ended. A soldier calling for people who never came out. A child crying in the darkness. And sometimes, the sound of someone knocking. 3 slow knocks from inside the earth. Perhaps the soldier I saw wasn't waiting for the war to end. Perhaps he was waiting for the people inside that cave. Perhaps he was still standing beside that road because he believed they were coming. And maybe, when he asked me if the war was over, he wasn't asking about the soldiers, he was asking about the people who had died. Because in his mind, the war could never end. Not while they were still trapped in the darkness. Not while he was still waiting for them. And not while someone could still hear them calling.